get nuts! Come on, let's get nuts.
To kick us off, Mike, what can you tell us about yourself, your background, and how you got into your whole area of research?
Well, the research found me more than I found the research, I think. I had been working in the western United States in the Rocky Mountains, and there's a Yellowstone National Park. I was fairly close to Yellowstone National Park. I was closer to Grand Teton National Park, and these are both really big, wild parks, really amazing landscape. And I was living in what's called a gateway city, which is the gateway to the park. And I was at the time I was doing a lot of work in Alaska and all up and down the Rockies, working for an outdoor school. And the outdoor school did 30-day trips where we would go into the mountains for 30 days. And that was really ambitious. And that I did that for close to 20 years. And it was a remarkable, powerful chapter of my life, doing these big wilderness trips. And the folks that choose to take a trip like that to go out for 30 days are usually really motivated. So it was young adults, mostly college age, and they were totally motivated and on fire. And it was super fun to spend a full month in the summer. And I used to do 2 trips a summer. So I remember I've done 60 days with 1 shower. And because you do 2 courses back to back and you only get a chance to do 1 shower in between the 2 courses. But anyway, so I was totally immersed in this. This would have been in 2006. I had this event, and I can talk about the event, but I had a powerful event involving owls. I'm happy to talk about it. But what it did, curiously, is it forced me to look into my UFO experiences. And those were things that I had had in my youth, like as a little boy, a 12-year-old boy. I had a few experiences, and I could talk about them at around the campfire or at a dinner thing, and I could just say, "Oh, this thing happened to me when I was a little kid," and I'd tell the story, and I'm like, "Golly, whatever," and I would move on. And there came a point when it was just like I started reading UFO books. And I would kind of read these things, mostly like contact books about abduction, like Bud Hopkins and Whitley Strieber and John Mack. And I was reading these books and I was like, ooh, this happened to me. But at the same time, I was like, no way, not going there, not going to deal with this. And then that all ended in 2006 with this event where I was camping. I can tell you, tell them, do you want to hear the story?
Oh, of course.
Yes, please.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I don't know so I've told this a lot. So, but it's a wonderful story. And I was living in this town in 2006. I'm 63 now. I would have been 44 years old then. And I had spent the summer in Alaska. I came down to the lower 48, and that's back down to the continental United States. Is called the lower 48 here, as opposed to there's Alaska and Hawaii, which make 49 and 50. So the work I was doing in Alaska was mountaineering work. So the backpacks, you're basically winter camping on glaciers with like ropes and climbing gear and carrying all your own fuel because there's no liquid water. You got to melt all the water to drink, and it's like unbelievable how heavy the packs are. So I got back down to the lower 48 and I wanted to go camping, and I just wanted to take the lightest pack possible. And I have in the town, just right to the doorway to the Tetons, which is this beautiful mountain range. And so there's a branch of the school in the town I was living at. And I met this young woman, and she had been working at the branch of the school, and she had been there all summer. I had been up in Alaska all summer, so it was autumn at this point in September. And I said, "Oh, you've been here all summer long. You must have camped all the time in the Tetons. You must have been out there all the time in the Tetons." And she said, "I didn't go camping once." And I was like, "That's terrible. I'll take you camping." So I took a complete stranger camping, which might sound kind of funny, but that was kind of the culture. Everyone was this, kind of camping mindset in this community. So we went in the mountains. with super light packs. We didn't even take a shelter. We didn't take a tent because the weather looked beautiful and we were only going out for one night. So just took a bare amount of food and just, it was, so super tiny packs. And we walked with sneakers on as opposed to big hiking boots and got deep into the mountains in just a few hours. And as the sun was setting, I was completely in my element. I had been out all summer long and I was sitting on a big flat rock making dinner with a little camp stove. And we were having a conversation. And her name is Kristen. And so Kristen and I were having this conversation. And there was a point, and I was like, oh man, you're like, this woman is smart. This woman is like, there's like a spiritual side to her. There's like an intuitive side to her. I did not suspect this at all. And so we're having this conversation. And right at the moment when I was like, whoa, I'm impressed, an owl flew over us. And then a second owl, and then a third owl. And for the next couple of hours, these owls were flying around us. They would land near us. They would land on tree branches. They were watching us. It was so cool. It was really cool. Never happened to me before. So we were in what's called grizzly bear country. We were in bear country. So we you don't want to sleep near where you cook. So, we had such low gear. We just put everything in a little stuff sack and walked another quarter mile or so and found a nice, beautiful flat spot in the wildflowers. We just slept on the ground. We laid our sleeping pads out and the sun was setting and the owls followed us. So the owls followed us. So they were with us. So we laid down on the landscape, on the ground and the sun went down, totally dark. And the owls were still there. So if you're lying on the ground looking up at the stars, and this is a part of the world, we're at high elevation, nowhere near a big city, so there's no light pollution, and a high elevation in the northern Rockies, it was just, the stars are spectacular. So I'm lying there, and these owls would swoop near our faces, and they would blot out the stars for just a half a second. It's really powerful, really magical. So the next morning, we're like, wow, that was pretty fun. That was cool. That was awesome. And then I dropped her off, and I said, we walked out, and I dropped her off at where her car was parked in town. And I said, we should do this again. She said, let's do it again. Yeah. So 4 days later, we went out again to a different part of the mountains. This time it was colder, so we did take a shelter. And we actually got snowed on the second time, but just a little dusting. But so we go into the mountains. And the sun is setting, and we're on this kind of bare hilltop, no trees around, infinite view all around the beautiful mountains. And as the sun is setting, 3 owls fly around us again. Now, to have it happen once was really cool, but to have it happen twice with the same person within 4 days was positively mystical.
Yeah.
And the second time the owls were getting really close to us, and they're what's called short-eared owls, and they're not very big. They're maybe 10 inches tall, and they're cute, and there was nothing intimidating about the owls, but it was bizarre to have it happen twice. Now, there was one point when this owl landed at Kristen's feet, and I just still have this image of her, this expression. She was just like, oh. And we were both like astonished, like at our feet. And as this was happening, both nights, I did not talk about this. I wrote a diary entry about this after it all happened, and I included it in the diary, but I didn't talk about it publicly. But at the time, I didn't. But now I sort of can't shut up about it. But as I was looking at these owls, these real owls with Kristen, both nights, I heard a voice in my head that said, "This has something to do with the UFOs." And I looked it up, and actually what I wrote down in the diary entry was, this has something to do with the UFOs. You are an abductee. And I heard that in my mind both nights. So there's no UFO in the story except the thought in my head. And then afterwards, after coming out of the field, I started looking into my own experiences. Both Kristen and I were like, whoa, those owls. We were looking up the spirit meaning of owls. 2006 may not seem that long ago, but that was really early on in the age where you could actually Google something and search something online. Yeah. So we were searching, like, what's the spirit meaning of owl? What's the mythic meaning of owl? What's the folklore of the owl and stuff like that. And we were both a little a little, well, me more than her. She was interested, but I went crazy. I just had a conversation with her recently, and she was like, I said, yeah, I kind of came unhinged, and she laughed and she said, oh, you sure did. And then so I started looking to my own experiences because of the voice in my head. So I reached out to UFO researchers, particularly ones who one man in particular. His name is Leo Sprinkle. He's since passed on, but he was a big-hearted guy who lived somewhat near me. It was kind of a long drive, but I met with him a few times and did a lot of phone calls with him, and it was a really, really rough chapter of my life because at after after the second this chapter of my life, after the owl sightings and the second set of owl sightings there, I was hit with so many weird synchronicities that I could not ignore. And those synchronicities were really oppressive, and they seemed to all be clustered around UFOs and owls, the sort of synchronistic events. And I started a blog where I was only going to write about synchronicities because I've had a lot of them in my life. And I thought, oh, that'd be a nice blog. That was pretty early on in the era of blogging. And because a synchronicity's got a nice, like a meaningful coincidence. You can make a nice little short post on it. Doesn't need to be long. And then there came a point when all of my writing started to be about owls and UFOs. And so people started reaching out to me with their owl and UFO stories. And it didn't take long before I was like, if you searched out owl and UFO on Google, I was the first thing that came up. And that's continued. And if you could do that right now, I'll be the first thing that comes up. And then in the aftermath of all this and starting the blog, people started sending me their stories. So I started collecting these stories and archiving these stories. And consequently, I got so many that I turned them into a book, and then another book, and then a third book. And so there's actually 4 books, which are very much where I'm mining, where I'm telling the stories that people have sent to me, as well as my own stories. And so that's a long explanation. That's how I got into it. My old life kind of ended in the sense that I was no longer doing the outdoor work, and this new work emerged in my life, which was the writing work and researching this stuff.
On that night with Christine, the second night, did you see any UFOs?
Nope, just the voice in
No.
my head. No.
Right. And when you first started writing about it, and when people first started reaching out to you, were you surprised by the link between the two, that you weren't the only one who'd had this experience?
Well, it was part of the lore. Whitley Strieber wrote about it in his book Communion, and other researchers had mentioned it. So you could pick up a book on UFOs, and not all of them, but some of them, you'd find a couple sentences. It'd be like, oh, the witness mentioned that he saw an owl around the same time that he had the sighting. And this is something that shows up now and again in the research. It was very minimal. And Whitley Strieber, in his book Communion, which came out in 1987, wrote about it. And so I was well aware that there was this connection. What I wasn't aware of is how weird the stories were. So Leo Sprinkle would send me a note, or he'd call me on the phone. He'd say, Mike, talk to this person. They have similar experiences to you. So I'd call them up. And then on the phone call, I would say, hey, have you ever had any odd experiences with owls? And it wasn't everyone, but at the beginning, it felt like it was everyone. He would tell me, I would hear the weirdest stories about owls. And initially, it really threw me for a loop. It seems like it's totally normal for me now. That's all I do is answer letters like this. But initially, I was really thrown off balance by the intensity and the strangeness of the stories I was getting.
What were your two? I know you said you had 2 UFO alien experiences. Was that correct? Two experiences.
Well, it depends on what you call it. I mean, there's the number
Yeah.
goes up or down by what like the intensity of them. I certainly had. So in my youth, as a 12-year-old boy, I saw what I felt like was a close-up UFO. It was out a window, and I would have been at a sleepover with a little kid in the neighborhood, and it was nighttime. It was the weekend, and so we could stay up late. And for some reason we walked from one room to the other. We walked into his room, and it was dark in the room and it was dark outside. And either him or I can't remember who it was, went, "Look." And we both went right up to the glass of the window and looked out the window. And there was something that looked like, here, I got a prop here. Something that looked like a coffee can. This is just a little plastic jar. It looked like a little coffee can shaped jar shape. And it was descending at this really weird way. It was kind of rotating and descending in the sky at this really, so like a helicopter would fly like this and a balloon would bob around, but this was on this crooked angle that didn't make any sense for something that would fly. And it had like I'm gonna use a pen here, but it had like a little post sticking out of the top of it. So that's that's actually pretty good. That's roughly the shape of it. I did an illustration in my book and on my blog, and
yeah, it's on your website, isn't it, as well?
Yeah, yeah. And then I watched it for maybe 20, 30 seconds, and then boop, it disappeared. And we both ran downstairs and I drew it, or we both drew it. And I still have the drawing that I did, a pencil drawing. And then, I don't know, somewhere around 2007, 8, I did an updated version of the illustration using Photoshop. So I did a pretty clean, tight illustration of what it looked like in my memory. And then I also had another experience when I was 12, right around that same time. It would have been right around that same time. And I was walking home from a high school football game, American football, and so I was in a little neighborhood. Oop, I just lost you. Am I there? Oh yeah, there's the image.
I'm back in again now.
Yeah, there we go. Gotcha. So there's the image. Yeah, that's the image. So I was walking home from a high school football game, and the school was right in the neighborhood, so it was a short walk. And on Friday nights, all the kids would go to the game. And I was in middle school, so I wasn't old enough to go to the high school game. And but that's where the kids went on Friday night. So I wanted to be home in time to see a television show. So I told my parents that I would be home at 9:30. I said, I'm going to be home at 9:30. I want to see this television show that starts at 10. So I walked home with a friend. His name is also Mike. And we got to a spot in the neighborhood, which was about a block from my house. And there was on the sidewalk, we were on the sidewalk, we're walking along, and then the sky lit up, turned orange, turned back to normal nighttime sky. And this was a calm, beautiful autumn night in Michigan, so the Midwest, so completely pleasant, benign weather. And then, but the sky lit up like bright orange for 1 second, back to the nighttime sky. And it was the whole sky. And him and myself and Mike both did this thing where we went, what just happened? What was that? Was it lightning? Didn't make any sense. Wouldn't have been lightning. Could it have been an explosion? That didn't make sense. It was totally silent. Could the telephone poles or the power lines kind of crisscrossed and zapped or something? That didn't make any sense either. So when I got home, my friend Mike lived a little further in the neighborhood, and I walked in my front door. Both my parents were waiting for me. They were all stern standing there in the living room, and they're like, "Why are you doing out so late?" And I'm like, "Wait, what do you mean? Like, I'm not out late. I'm out. It's 9:30. It's a short walk of like just a couple blocks to the high school. I know exactly what time I know what time I left. It's 9:30." And they pointed to the clock, and it was 11:30. And I remember like so clearly being like, whoa, that does not compute. And they were mad at me, and I was like, you don't have any right to be mad at me. I was pretty precocious as a kid. I'm sure I made my case. They didn't buy it at all. And then this is way before anything about missing time was in the literature, like in the public consciousness. And then the next morning at school, I talked to Mike, and there was a bunch of friends sitting around in the cafeteria at the middle school. And I said, hey, something weird happened on Friday night. And Mike, can I swear on the show?
You can, of course.
Okay, good.
Yeah, work away.
So Mike, I said, we saw something weird on Friday night. And Mike said, yeah, we saw a UFO with fucking lights and everything. And I was just like, I didn't see a UFO. I never saw a UFO. And he said and I remember thinking like, oh, this is how stories get blown out of proportion. He's lying. And I never brought it up until about like 40 years later. I called him a couple of years ago and said, what do you remember about that night? And he's like, I told the story. I don't remember anything about that night. And I told the story and he's like, nope, nothing I remember. And then I was like, how strange. And then he said, oh, you know what I do remember? I do remember your parents were angry at you for coming home late. I remember that part of the story, but he didn't remember anything. And having done this work, this research, and like talked to all kinds of people and listened to, I don't know, thousands of witness reports, it's very common, especially after a long stretch, that one person will remember something and another person won't, or someone will remember it as red and the other person will remember it as green. So these, kind of strange things show up. It should be a pretty powerful experience, but it was, but so I can't. All I can do is, I don't know what he saw, but all I can do is I remember him saying that just a couple days later.
Did his parents have a similar reaction to your parents? Was he?
I don't think so. In fact, he had a bunch of brothers and sisters, and I bet you he just could slide in the house, and the parents wouldn't even know. So, that would be my sense.
Have you tried?
So he never mentioned. I don't have any memory. So, go on.
Yeah. Have you tried any regression hypnotherapy at all? Trying to get out these memories. Okay. Any success?
How much time do we have?
All the time you like.
As long as you want.
Okay, here let me tell one more story. And when I was also 12, no, excuse me, I was 30. So over half my life ago, so 33 years ago, I was living in Maine. And it was wintertime, and I was living alone, and I had just broken up with my fiance. I was kind of miserable, and I woke up in the middle of the night, and there was a bright light shining through the window, and I sat up, and I looked out the window, and there was a big bright light, and then close to the house were 5 gray beings, 5 gray aliens. And I did an image of this on my blog too. It's in there somewhere. I think it's out my bedroom window. You could search that; it'll come right up. So I'm looking out this window. There's 5 skinny gray beings with the big bald heads and the black eyes and the creepy skinny bodies, and they're walking towards the house. And I should have panicked or something, but I wasn't. I was weirdly numb. And I heard a voice in my head that said, oh yes, they're here. Now is the time to put your head on the pillow and shut down. And that's exactly what I did. Yeah, there we go. Yeah, that's actually pretty, including the little dinosaur on the windowsill. That was actually there. And that little, the bare bush without any leaves was right there outside the window too. And the bright light in the background, like if it was the size of a great big flying saucer, that would have been perfect, but it wasn't. It was small. It was like the size of a washing machine or something. It wasn't very big. And, but the sensation, and I've talked to a lot of people since, the sensation was of this weird silence, of this like weird clarity. Like it didn't feel like waking up. Like I wasn't groggy, but it was this weird clarity. And it's hard to explain. And it felt a little bit like, it was like normal reality was distorted. Now you could say that about a dream, right? A dream has distorted reality kind of woven right into the fabric of any dream. And I know what a dream feels like, and this didn't feel the same. And I can also say that I never really dream about the room I'm in. And if I do dream about the room I'm in, it's kind of distorted and something isn't right or something's a little wonky. So, but the next morning I got up and I just dismissed it as a dream. And I never even went out to see if there were footprints in the snow. I think if you scroll down, there's a second image there of that. I think that was the image I made shortly after. Yeah,
Oh, there you
that
go.
image there. So
Yeah.
that image is not quite accurate because I was actually would have been looking the other way, which would flip it a little bit. I don't know. So, and there's only two there, but that was the image I made within a month or so, within a few weeks. I don't think I did it the next morning, but it was within a few weeks. And then I added that Photoshop. It was just a pen and ink, just line drawing on paper. And I added the tone years later using Photoshop. So that was the original image that I drew, the pen lines there. And then I added the darker tone because the room was dark except for the bright light shining in. So so I dismissed that completely. And then there's a researcher named Bud Hopkins who's since passed on.
Yeah.
And I did a hypnosis session. Yeah, I did a hypnosis session with him. I used to live in New York, so I had a lot of friends in New York. So it was easy for me to visit New York and stay with friends. And then on one trip, I spent time with Bud and did a hypnosis session. And we looked at this event. And not much new emerged. But what emerged was something, I guess I actually sort of remember feeling this, but I just didn't have I didn't have it in me to just declare it because it just seemed kind of too strange. But when I looked out and saw the five beings walking towards the house, and they were close. It wasn't like, and there was no other houses there. This is a house out in the woods. So there's no other houses nearby, and they were close. And the way they were walking, they weren't walking right towards the window. They were going to kind of pass the corner of the house, and that's where the front door was. They were like on their way to the front door, where my window was just a little on the side. The feeling I had in the hypnosis was like, oh, they're back. Like it was totally, it's them again. Oh, it's that. It's here they are again. And it felt completely like, oh yeah, this thing. It's this thing. It's this thing that happens every once in a while. And here they are all again. Here I'm seeing them again. That was really palpable. That feeling of just total familiarity. And I'm hesitant to say this, but it felt like if I had a memory of aunts and uncles coming over for dinner, and I looked out the window and the aunts and uncles were walking up the driveway, and then a year later they were coming over for dinner again, and I looked out the window and the aunts and uncles were coming up the driveway, I could go, oh yeah, it's them. So it had this weird, almost family feeling to it, which I've since learned is that's something that people say. I can't vouch for whether that's true, but I can say that was the feeling I felt.
Amazing. It must have been surreal, like looking back on it. And what like, I know you've said you've had discussions with the likes of Travis Walton as well. Like when you hear his story, is there similarities that through discussion with him that you wouldn't have maybe seen until you had them discussions with him? Is there similarities there with your experiences that you wouldn't have heard of before?
Well, I've met Travis a few times, and it's usually in a setting with other people who have had UFO experiences. So, and he's a very quiet guy. He's very guarded too. So he's a very quiet, introverted guy, and he did not choose to have that experience, and he was kind of thrust. Like he pretty much says, I never would have told anyone what happened but there was the whole issue where he disappeared, and the people who were looking for him, and and then so and the people saw the flying saucer, and so they told that to the police when he went missing, and then when he reappeared, he was like thrust into the media, and it was a rough chapter of his life. I don't have the direct experiences that he has had, like those things, but I've certainly talked to other people who have had similar experiences. You know what people say, and this is so like whatever I've talked to a lot of people that have a UFO contact experience, and then 15 years will go by and they'll have another one. There might be other things going on that are unremembered, but it's like you kind of live your normal life in the middle between those two. But what people who have the contact experience will talk about is really weird, powerful synchronicities, as well as like a sense of mission. Like people will start blogs, they'll write books, they'll start directing documentaries on the subject. Like people get really motivated. And I certainly fall into that category, having written the books that I have, where people get really dedicated to telling their story or to reaching out to other people. So I've talked to a lot of people who have had the contact experience, and I'm much more at peace with it now. And I talk to people who are in that remember I said, Kristen said, "Oh, you came unhinged," and that's true. I did have a really tough time for a few years there, and then that evened out, and I sort of abandoned myself to it, and what was happening was there was like a tape loop in my head that was saying, "This can't happen, this can't happen, this can't happen, it can't involve you," and it was. Oh yeah, and it wasn't. I couldn't keep it up, and then when I finally truly accepted it, that voice shut up, and the little tape loop got pulled out of my brain and never went back in. Stuff was still tough. Things were still tough, and I had to. But I didn't have that churning voice, so I was much more at peace once I said, "Oh, this stuff really happened," and I'm also like I don't know the source of this stuff. You know, you talk to some people and they'll say, "Oh, they're my space angel guides, and they come from the planet from the Pleiades, which is a star system. They come from the Pleiades, and they're benevolent, and they're my space brothers." And then, but I don't have anything like that I can. So I say we're dealing with a genuine mystery, and I don't know the source of it. And the stories get so weird. And I can tell some stories that people have had that it doesn't fit like little scientists coming here on a metal spaceship. If they were just coming here, then there'd be people would have a set number of experiences or like but it's what happens. This is a weird thing. People who have here, let me back up a little bit. I'm looking only at people who have owl experiences that are co-joined with a UFO experience. And so I'll tell you some more stories that I've had myself, but and I'm not looking at the big picture. I'm looking at this owl UFO thing. So the people who are having an owl and UFO experiences, they become psychic, not 100%, but enough that it's a pattern, and they become healers. Do you know what Reiki healing is?
Yeah, so it's an ancient form of Japanese.
It's a Japanese form of energetic. You don't touch the patient, your hands off, but you can hover your hands above the patient and provide healing. So I'm only one person. It's really tough for me to truly crunch the numbers because I've heard so many stories, and the number of people who say, like I say, "What do you do for work?" And they go, "I'm a Reiki healer," is roughly half the people who have a co-joined owl and UFO experience. If they're not doing direct Reiki healing, they're doing some other form of energy healing. I talked to one guy who had a powerful owl experience and then other UFO type experiences in his life. And he was middle America, not at all prone to New Age. He wasn't following that path. And I said, "Hey, do you have any healing abilities?" And he's like, "What are you talking about? Healing abilities? Do I have healing abilities?" I'm like, "Yeah, like, can you like heal people with your hands?" And he thought for a second. He says, "When my wife was going through chemotherapy, I could just put my hands above her body and I could alleviate the pain from the chemotherapy."
Oh.
And I was like, "Okay, that qualifies." Like, it's so common with the people. So I mean, if I don't know, like if it was little scientists coming from another planet, why would they interact with people on Earth and then those people would turn into healers or psychics? or like start talking to their dead grandmother. I mean, this is really common in the lore. And not, I mean, in the lore, I mean, it's like, it's right there in the UFO reports. And even very, very conservative UFO organizations are well aware of these things taking place in the lives of people who have had these experiences.
Yeah, I don't know if did you get the chance to watch that new documentary, The Age of Disclosure?
I have not. No, it's funny. That's like, I'm almost not interested in it. Like,
Yeah,
I don't need anyone to tell me that there's like, this is real.
I know,
Like,
right?
it's also
You can,
$19. It's kind of expensive. So,
yeah.
Um, yeah, like I watched it, and again, it's stuff that if you're interested in the whole phenomenon, it's stuff you've heard of before anyway, you know. Um, but they're starting to say that because of a lot of this footage of, let's say, UFO crafts, UAPs, whatever you want to call them, that they're very blurry. The whole reason is that they're within their own vacuum, almost like a field that they've created
mhm.
themselves, and light is bending around it. And then you have some things that they say are interdimensional crafts. So you're talking about the physical 3D universe that we're all living in. Like these things have to be phasing in from different dimensions, and that's probably in essence what leads into this healing aspect
Yeah.
as well. You know, all these different of layers of consciousness and dimensions. It's all connected, not just within our 3D
Mhm.
universe as we know it.
So here's a story. So a friend of mine, this is actually a good friend of mine, he was reading my first book and he finished the book, read the whole book. It was nighttime, got to the last page, closed the book, and he said, I want to see an owl. I want to see an owl. So he walks outside and he looks up in the sky, and there's like this thing that catches his eye, and it's this little, here's how he described it. He said if someone took the fabric of space and it was just like the black inky fabric of space, it was where the stars, and that was like a screen. It was like someone got behind the screen, cut it with a razor blade, and shined a really bright light through the hole. So he said, it felt like I wasn't seeing an object. It felt like someone put a little slit in the fabric of space and shined a light through it. And that's what I saw. And that's what you get in these reports if you really listen. You get this weird stuff. So he looked at it for just a little bit and he looked away and he looked back and it was gone.
Yeah.
So he went out with the intention, I want to see an owl, and he saw a UFO instead. So there's no owl in the story except for his intention. That he's also had some experiences around the house there too, which are pretty fun. There's lots going on there too. So him and his wife are both have a big set of experiences. And they have owls. They had baby owls roosting in their backyard. They had owls all over their house for a while.
Wow.
And the people that you have interviewed, how did they find the experience? Like when you describe looking out the window and you were like had a feeling of familiarity with what you were looking at, and you didn't have a feeling of terror. I've come across so many interviews with people who describe just like what you described. They look out the window, they see these beings, but they experience real terror. Did you come across anyone who was terrified and
Mm.
I suppose left shaken and maybe not wanting to talk about it?
Oh, so I have an experience which involved incredible fear. So and then I'll also say that when I tell that story about, and I kind of go like, I kind of, as an aside, I say the story I just told about the five beings, and I said, they sort of felt like familiar, like they were my family. I have told that to people. Every person that has had the contact experience that I tell that to, they nod and they go, that's exactly what it feels like. So that's a funny little detail. Um, in 2000, it's either 2010 or 11. I think it was 2011. No, 2010. 2010. I was camping in Utah in the desert in the southern United States with a woman I was dating. She's from Germany. Her name is Natasha. And I met her at a UFO conference, and she has had her own experiences. So here's two experiencers camping around. We're driving around the Southwest, and we asked in this little town, like, where's a good place to camp? And out west, there's like lots of open, what's called federal land and just open land. And every little town has got like this spot. Oh, you just drive to the edge of town, you make a left here, you go out on the right road there. So somebody pointed us to this really nice spot to camp. So we put a tent up there. We were traveling between two places. And actually, you know, what was funny, my car, the brakes were faulty. I had to get a rent-a-car. And so we were in the rent-a-car. So we had spent part of the day dealing with my car issues. So it felt a little bit like we were like stuck in this town, you know, like, so we go to sleep, and this is like an idyllic campsite in the Rockies with the pine trees and the, you know, it's just really, really pretty spot. And we go to sleep at night, and then we woke up in the middle of the night, and both of us are screaming, like terrified, screaming. There's no other campers around. So this is like, we're kind of in a lone, isolated area. So I mean, we are like both freaking out. Now, I've been a outdoor educator. I've camped in grizzly bear country. I've had all kinds of experiences with like animals, like, you know, scratching at the edge of the tent, and I've dealt with bears and moose, and I'm made of pretty strong stuff when it comes to like sleeping out. So like it, like, I've described it as synthetic fear. It felt like fear, like an irrational fear that has no correlation to normal fear. Like, the way I say it is, if a grizzly bear had ripped open the tent and put its jaws around my throat, I would not have been as scared as I was in that moment. And somehow I were like, Natasha, what happened? What happened? What happened? And she's like, I saw a face. And what do you like? And my sense is both of us woke up screaming, and she describes it the same way. She describes it as the deepest level of hell. And I remember I actually kind of climbed onto her, like as if someone had thrown a hand grenade in the tent. And I'm like, what happened? What, you know, and I remember I kind of panicked, and I was like, we can get out of here. We can go to town. We can get a hotel room. There was no freaking way I was going to unzip that tent door. Jesus. So, and then we went right from like, freaking out to like totally, you know, it's funny. I remember under my breath, I was going, love and light, love and light, love and light, love and light, which is not like me at all. But I was like, I just wanted to calm the situation down any way I could. So, but then we're like, we're freaking out, and we're both asleep. And then I remember, which I don't think this is really what happened. I remember floating up in the tent, like elevator up feeling, like, and then in the corner of there's an image of this in my blog too, that I did. It's I think it would be called irrational fear. You could search irrational fear on my blog, in a tent. And then there was what looked like a pizza pan, like the size of a pizza pan, like an 18-inch pizza pan, like a large pizza. And it would look like it was made out of plexiglass, like kind of semi-opaque plexiglass, and there was a single dot in the middle. And this was hovering in the tent right near Natasha's either her feet or her knees, at that low in that corner of the tent. And I was floating up, and I see this thing, and there, yes, exactly. There's Natasha. And I was floating up, and then I passed right through. I expected to bump into the roof of the tent, but I didn't. I like passed right through, and then I was in this white realm. And as I'm floating, I go, I have to remember this. I have to remember this. I have to remember this. And then I passed through the tent, and then I started saying, am I on a table? Am I on a table? Am I on a table? Mm. And then Natasha's from Germany. She's got a German accent, and in her German accent, she goes, Mike, you're floating. She has this really soft voice. Mike, you're floating. And then whoosh, I'm back in the tent. Now, I don't think that happened the way I'm describing it, but that's my memory. That's what I woke up. And then the next morning, like, I slept all the way through the night, which is unusual for me, especially when I'm sleeping outside. I'll wake up a little bit, and I'll roll over, and I'll kind of drift in and out a little bit. But in this situation, I slept all the way through, woke up, sun's out, birds chirping, and I'm like, I feel fine. And I'm like, Natasha, what happened? What happened? And she said, I saw a face. I'm like, what are you talking about? You saw a face? Where? Like, she said, can you, like, where did you see it? And she points exactly to where I saw that circle. And then when I get up, leave the tent, and it's a beautiful morning. I walked around. I was like looking for a big burn mark where a flying saucer landed. There was nothing, but I was just like, what happened? And I later on that day, I took my shirt off and I had starting at my left shoulder down to my belly button, I had a thin little scratch, and it was really thin, and it looked like if a single rose thorn, someone dragged a single rose thorn just down from my shoulder to near my hip.
Whoa.
It was really, and there was no pain, but when we looked at it really closely, it wasn't a scratch at all. It was a tight row of tiny fluid-filled blisters, like half a millimeter, itty bitty red raised fluid-filled blisters from my shoulder to my belly button. It kind of skittered in and out a little bit, but there was a line there. And a couple days later, I took a shower and it was gone, just washed right off. And both Natasha and I, once it was gone, both of us kind of went, why didn't we take a picture of it? She does like UFO investigation in Germany, and I was pretending to be a UFO researcher, and we're like, here we had this thing where like, how easy would that have been to take a picture? And we didn't. And which is also something that shows up in the literature. That's a very common thing that's reported. And then that story is connected synchronistically to a whole list of other stories that eventually forced me to say like, oh, this is real. And that's when the tape loop came out of my head.
What are some of the other synchronicities that you were saying that down through them years that you witnessed?
Well, here, let me tell. Okay, so here, just as an aside, you earlier you asked if I had any experiences with hypnosis.
Yeah.
And if I tell like a collection of stories that's just interwoven with synchronicities, I have no problem telling a story, but it takes a few minutes to tell this story.
Yeah, no worries at all.
Okay.
If you're happy to.
Let me get so I just told the story about the irrational fear in the tent with Natasha, and that took place in 2010. And then in 2011, I'll go in order. Okay, so 2011, a year later, Natasha came back to the United States. We went to a UFO conference, and we had a great time. And then we drove around the West again. So where we were, the conference was down in the southern part of Arizona, and then we drove back to Idaho, which is just the most beautiful part of the Rocky Mountains. So we did this long, gentle, took our time, went camping, went hiking, and went back to where I lived in Idaho. And then she flew back to Germany from Idaho, where I was living at the time. Now, there came a night where I'd been driving all day, and I said, I've been in this part of the country before. I know a good spot. This is very similar to the other story. So we found this really nice spot to sleep out under the stars. And this was near a town called Boulder, Utah. And there's this road called the Burr Trail Road, and it just drives through the empty desert, and it connects two towns. It's about a 50-mile road, and it's this famous road because there's all kinds of wonderful hiking and camping off of it, but it's only a dirt road. They don't maintain the road very well, so it doesn't see much traffic. So we just drove a few miles in from Boulder, Utah, and it was daylight, and we found this really pretty spot to camp, and we made food there, and it was just alongside the road, and there was other people had camped there before, and it was really, really pretty. And then the sun went down, and I'd been driving all day and stuff like that, so I was kind of tired, and so I fell asleep. And then somewhere in the night, Natasha wakes me, and she goes, "Mike, I can't sleep. I'm totally jet lagged, and I can't sleep at all. What do I do?" And I said, "Take a walk." And she says, "Is it safe? Are you kidding? Take a walk here?" And I'm like, "Sure, it's safe. It's like this is a pretty empty part of the world, and I wouldn't worry at all. Go ahead and take a walk." And she's like, "Okay." So I lay down, and as I'm drifting back to sleep, I am right next to this bush. And this bush, there's a great horned owl in the bush. And a great horned owl is a North American owl, but it's got this really booming call. It's got this really distinctive, loud call. And it's a big owl, so it's loud and I was already well immersed in this owl research at this point. And so I was like, why? This thing is right in the bush next to me. I'm sleeping on the sand on my sleeping pad. Natasha's pad is right next to me. She's out on a walk. This owl is right in the bush. And I sit up and I like look at this bush like, why can't I see this owl? But it was really it's like a really beautiful, powerful, like magical feeling to be that close to wildlife and in this absolutely glorious environment, the trillion zillion stars. And so I kind of like listen to this owl and I drift off in and out of sleep. And then all of a sudden Natasha is like right next to me. She's like, Mike, we got to get out of here. We got to go. We got to leave. I'm like, what? She said, we got to leave right now. I'm like, and I'm like, what is it? What happened? And here's the story she tells. She said she was leaving the little spot where I was sleeping. She walked down short little stretch of sand on a road where you could drive the car. And then there's the road. And she kind of made a turn on the road and she was walking. She said she brought a flashlight, but she didn't need it. She said the starlight, there was no moon, but the starlight alone was enough to illuminate everything. And she said it was so beautiful. She'd like never experienced anything like this in the desert night. It was so beautiful. And the light was so eerie. It felt like I was sparkling. Like she had this magic feel, like I was sparkling. And then she looks off in the sagebrush, in the little shrubs there, and there's this little ball of light. She thought at first that it was someone with a flashlight. And she's looking at this thing. Someone's out there with a flashlight. And she looks again and says, there's nobody out there. This is a floating ball of light. It's a little orb, a little white orb, floats along, and then it comes towards her and it gets kind of big, like the size of a big beach ball. And then it shrinks back down and poof, it disappears. Like with a flash, it disappears. And now she's standing there all alone, and now she's scared, and she runs back, and that's when she wakes me. So she saw a UFO. It's a little orb, but it's an unidentified flying object, flying. Simultaneously to her, Natasha seeing the orb, I'm listening to an owl. So owl, UFO, totally co-joined. Like we were only, I don't know, meters.
Yeah.
75 meters, less than 100 meters away. And then it was an incredibly still night. And I asked her, did you hear the owl? She's like, no, I never heard an owl. And I was like, that doesn't make any sense at all. That owl was really loud in the desert on a calm night. Wow, sound carries forever. I mean, so if there had been a loud owl, even 100 meters away, she would have heard it totally. She would have totally been able to hear it.
Yeah.
So we pack everything up. We drive away. It's like, I don't know, it was like 4 a.m. when we were driving away, and both of us were pretty shaken up. And then that event, that was 2011 in the springtime, either March or May. I think that would have been March. And then here's the third story. And this happened. Now, again, I'm coming home from the same UFO conference that was run annually. I haven't been there in a few years. It's run in southern Arizona. And so I was coming home from the conference and I loved the drive. So I take the scenic route. I don't get on the big interstate and go fast. I take the little windy roads and just enjoy every minute of the drive. So I camped on the side of the road in, this may not mean much, but there's on Highway 20 in southern Utah, between Beaver, Utah, and Cedar City, Utah. And I just pulled off to the side of the road. The sun was down, and there was a spot where other people had pulled off the road before. So people had slept out like that. It's pretty common for people out west to just kind of sleep on the side of the road. And it was very normal for me. I have all kinds of camping gear and stuff like that. So totally, again, beautiful, calm night. This was March 10th, 2013. So 2 years after the event in March of 2010. And I I had a big thick sleeping pad, and then a big winter sleeping bag, and a down coat and a big pillow, and I just laid it out, and I remember laying down, and the stars were magnificent. I thought to myself, this is so wonderful. I am so appreciative of this, of being able to do this. This is so pretty. And I fell right asleep. And I woke up at some point that night, and I looked up on this hillside. Have you heard this story? Have you heard me tell the story?
No, I haven't heard this one now.
Oh, okay. So I like telling this story, but it takes a lot to. So anyway, so I wake up in the middle of the night, and I look up on this hillside, and I look up there, and I say to myself, that looks just like a landed flying saucer. And it was kind of dark against the night sky, and it was like right on the crest, like there was a gentle hill. It was right on the crest of the hill, so it was like I could see the starry night behind it. And but it looked like it was shaped like a sawed-off cylinder. It wasn't like a flying saucer like the classic one. It was more like a sawed-off cylinder. Again, I used this as a thing before, but it was really, what it looked like? It looked like a municipal water storage tank that they have out west in places. Like it just was, but it was dark against night sky and had a row of lights around it, which a municipal tank wouldn't have. And I think, like, that looks just like a flying saucer. And I think to myself, like, I just was at a UFO conference, and every once in a while I get a little psychic flash of something. I got good intuition, and I'm like, I meditate, and I'm like, if this was a flying saucer, I would know, right? I would feel it deep down. I would know. So I sit there and I try to feel the UFO vibrations, and there was nothing. And I was like, oh, somebody's got a big house up there. It's like who knows what that thing is, but something's up on that hill. And I rolled over and went back to sleep. I woke up again, and there was a coyote howling near my head. Now, a coyote is not much bigger than a fox. And they're all over the place out west, and they make a huge racket at night, and they're loud. And this was as close as I have ever been to a coyote at night. I've slept out a lot, and you hear them off in the distance, but this felt like it was right next to my head. So I sat up and I looked around. I'm like, why can't I see this thing? And if I had a little dog biscuit, like a little dog treat, I felt like I could have just gone whoop and tossed it, and the coyote could have caught it in its mouth without having to throw it very far. But I never saw this thing, and it didn't make any sense. I'm telling this story, I've told it many times, but I cannot separate that coyote from this experience, from the owl from the other experience, right? The owl in the bush. It was like so close I couldn't hear it. It was so loud. I've never been that close to like that, hearing that kind of booming call so close. It was so similar, so eerily similar. And I did this, and I said, well, some coyote's like just behind a bush, and I'm not seeing it for some reason. So I laid down, and I remember even thinking, what a cool experience to have that thing so close. I wasn't scared at all. It's like the likelihood that a coyote would hassle me was zero. And they're tiny. And so I just like, oh, what a beautiful experience. And I went back to sleep. I woke up a third time, and there was a bright light behind the bush. There was a bush right at my feet. It was a juniper bush. And it was pretty dense and big, but there was this bright light behind the bush, and I sat up and I was like, what is that light? And I kind of tried to peek behind it, and I couldn't. And it didn't feel like car headlights, right? So if a car was parked there, I kind of know what headlights look like. And I go, no, that looks like headlights. It was different. It was like a weird white glow. It didn't seem like someone with a flashlight. And I was like, well, and I rolled over and went to sleep. Now, the next morning I got up, and this is a funny detail, and I certainly may have looked up and seen the round structure on the hill. Now, I woke up 3 times, once to see the round structure the first time, once to listen to the coyote, and the third time because of the light behind the bush. And each of those 3 times I looked up, and the round structure was up there. Now, the next morning, I certainly could have. I don't have the memory of looking up there, but I do. But I'm certain I would have, but I have no memory of if that thing was up there in the morning. It was still dark when I got up to start driving. And I actually walked around the other side of the bush in the morning to see if there was another car parked there. And it felt like where the light was, like, didn't match where a car could be. Like it was off in the bushes. Like no one would walk out there. The bushes in that part of the West are prickly and cactus, and you wouldn't walk around in the dark. So I drove home, and the very first thing I did was about a 10, 11 hour drive to get to my house from south of Salt Lake City to Driggs, Idaho, about a 10-hour drive. So I left at 5 in the morning. And so I was back by lunchtime. And the first thing I did when I got home is I got on the computer, I looked up on Google Maps, and I searched that spot, and I looked for that round structure on the hill. And there was nothing. And I was like, and the maps are dated, right? So the map was dated 2011. This was 2013. I was like, somebody built something up there in the last 2 years? Like, maybe. Now, I have since been back to that spot many times. I have never climbed the hill. It's always winter when I go there, and it just never works out. Someday I'm going to climb that hill, but I never climbed the hill. And but there's nothing there. Nothing there. Like it was super easy to see from that spot. I've been to that spot, right exactly at that spot, a bunch of times. There's nothing to see on that hill. But that night there was something clearly visible, a big structure.
That's mad.
So, it's pretty telling. So I was really obsessed. I put it all on my blog. This is on my blog too. And you can go in the sidebar of my blog. It says, "Now I know," I think is what it says on the side. And you can click on that and it'll take you to the event with the thing on the hill. So I'm standing in my living room. This is this is not that day, but the next day after. So this would have been the 12th, March 12th. So the event, I slept out under the stars March 10th. March 11th, I drove home and made the blog post. March 12th, I'm just standing by my desk, and I had already made the blog. I'd already put everything on the maps. I had maps with GPS coordinates, like where I was sleeping, where I think the thing was, and then there came a point when I was just standing there, and I just was like, click. I had this total vision in my mind, and then click, it went right off. And here's what I saw here. I'll draw it. It won't take long. There's 4 states come together at what's called the Four Corners, and one of them is Utah, and one of them is Colorado. And there were 3 dots along a bright yellow line. And these 3 dots were like little push pins. There, okay. Excuse me. I don't know if you can see that.
Good man. Yeah, we have it.
Oh, you have the map. Okay, so this is what I saw. I saw it in my mind's eye. And I knew this is where I had been 2 nights before. And then I knew this is where Natasha and I had the fear in the tent. And I had that GPS marked, so I just went right on the map, and then I put a bright yellow line in between the 2, and I was like, what happened here? What was this one? Because I've camped all over this part of the world, and I was like, oh, you know what this was? This was when I was camping with Natasha, and she saw the orb, and I listened to the owl. So these things lined up, and I sat down and I made the map and the little thing, and I zoomed in, and I had these spots already, except for the one near Boulder, Utah. I had the other 2 marked out on maps, and then I zoomed in and zoomed in and zoomed in. The line, that yellow line, on a real Google map. I saw this map in my mind. I created the map to match my mind. The sorry, I'm getting a little. The yellow line passed through where my sleeping pad was lying on the ground. You can see the bush that the owl was in. And with modern maps and zooming in, you can zoom right in, and you can, like in olden days, I would have had to get a really big paper map. I would have had to get a really long ruler and a really sharp pencil, and then drag that across to connect these 3 points. And then even if I zoomed in, that pencil line would be maybe a half a mile thick right, on the landscape.
Yeah,
But here I
yeah.
could get it to 1 pixel thick and zoom right in so that bush and the plot of sand fills the whole frame. It passed right through where I was lying. And I was just like, I give up. I give up. The end. All my denial, all my fighting is gone. And that's when the tape loop just ejected. And from that point on, it was just like,
It's
it was like,
nuts.
okay, that old life is gone. This new life has begun. Like any doubt I had is gone. I am 100% convinced. Like, no, this did not happen by accident. This was not just a coincidence.
Yeah, that's nuts.
How much time do we have?
As long as you like.
Because you asked me earlier about hypnosis, and I have a hypnosis session.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, now I actually, so I'm going to tell a story here that I don't trust. This hypnosis session, weird stuff. It like stretched me pretty big, and I'm like, it's like, okay, I know what came out in the hypnosis session, but I don't trust it as being real. So in 2018, I do a hypnosis session with Yvonne Smith, and she's in California. I was visiting California. I was doing a talk on camping. I was giving a talk at a school on lightweight camping. So they flew me out there. So I was in LA, and I was like, hey, I'm in LA. I'm going to talk to this UFO abduction researcher who does hypnosis. Her name is Yvonne Smith. I've met her many times, and I'm going to do a hypnosis session with her. So I called her up months ahead of time and made an appointment. And I said, Yvonne, I'm going to be in Los Angeles. Can we do a session? And she said, Mike, what a nice surprise to hear from you. I started your book, The Messengers, this morning. And I'm like, so you asked about the synchronicities. The synchronicities are all over this stuff. Oh, here, I'll do one more. So these three dots, right? These three push pins, these three things I saw in my psychic vision and matched up in real life. Okay. This one here, that's where I was sleeping alone. These two, I was with Natasha. This one where I was alone happened on March 10th. March 10th is Natasha's birthday. Like, it's like,
there you go again.
If I told you every little synchronicity on this stuff, and it would take a week to tell the story properly. So I meet with Yvonne in August of 2018. So I had already published 2 books on owls. I was working on a third one, and I was totally known as the owl guy. And I said, let's look at the night. I want to explore the night of March 10th, 2013. I got no fear associated with that night. The night was lovely. I just got nothing. It's totally benign. Just let's talk about that. I don't want to talk about anything that's scary. She's like, great, perfect. So, and then I say, hey, when I'm under, you ask me what's up with the owls. And she said, of course. Because I wanted to know, like, what if I'm on my subconscious, like, in that subconscious place, I want to know what it might mean. Now, I had never really had a successful hypnosis session. But I had tried it a few times. And so I wasn't like expecting much. And so I just kind of laid down on her couch, and it's funny, I was too tall, so I couldn't fit on her couch. My feet hung off the end. Remember, I had to put the coffee table up so I could rest my feet on the, like, kind of crooked on the couch. So she takes me, she says, okay, go down these stairs. You go lower and lower and lower. Every step down in the stairs, you get deeper into your trance. And so she says, okay, where are you? And I told her the night I was going to want to explore. I'm like, well, I'm on the side of the road, and there's my car, and there's this big bush, and there's this hill there, and I can look up at the hill, and I can see this round structure on the hill. And she said, okay, what happens next? And it took a little, I was like, kind of just like, oh, it's a nice night. The stars are pretty. I didn't say much. And all of a sudden I go, it's them. It's them. I know it's them. I know it's them. And I'm describing the bright light behind the bush. And then I say, I'm out. I'm looking, I'm floating up in the air, and I'm looking down at this big round black thing. It's black in the night sky, but I can see it's got a ring of lights around it. I'm floating directly above it. I'm looking down at it. And I think I'm still in the sleeping bag. And Yvonne says, Mike, do you think you're out of body? And I go, I don't know. I just know that I'm looking down at this thing, but I think I'm still in the sleeping bag. And then 1 second later, it's like, whoosh, I'm like walking in this hallway. And honestly, it's like if you had a big flying saucer, it's a curved hallway. It's shiny and kind of like this smooth metal plasticky interior. And it just imagine if you had a big giant flying saucer and there was a single hallway that's on the interior that made a full loop around the interior edge. And I was like walking in this hallway, and I was like walking in this curved hallway. And I say, my first thought was, I'm not tall. I'm 6 foot tall. I'm like, I'm not tall. I say that to Yvonne. And she's like, look down at yourself. Look around. And I look around, I look right and left, and on each side of me are these little gray aliens with the big bald heads and the big black eyes, and they're walking right with me, like shoulder at my shoulder, right and left, and they're the exact same height as me. And she goes, look down at yourself. And I looked at my hands, and I got these long, skinny fingers, and I got this skinny body, and I'm wearing this tight, shiny spacesuit thing. And I say, I think I'm a gray alien. Now, I don't think this really happened. This is like, but this is what emerged under hypnosis. I think I'm a gray alien. And then she doesn't skip a beat. She's heard everything. So she's totally calm. It's like, and Mike, what happens next? And then all of a sudden I'm in this conference room, and it's like a dingy little conference room with ugly beige carpeting and like crummy wallpaper and like low-hanging fluorescent lights. And then there's plastic folding tables. So I'm standing there, and I'm facing this plastic folding table, and on the other side of the folding table are like 8 little gray beings, but their faces are kind of fuzzed out. But my sense is that there are these gray beings. And I'm standing there, it's like I'm on trial or like a military tribunal, like I'm being brought before the generals or something. And I'm like, why am I here? Why am I here? What am I doing here? And they go, you volunteered for this. You chose this. I'm like, I chose this? Why am I here? And they go, now is the time. I go, what? Now is the time? I don't know what this means. Now is the time. Why? So I got kind of stuck in this, you chose this. Now is the time. And then all of a sudden I'd like snap, and I got so mad, and I like chewed these things out. It's just really rough to listen to on the audio, because this was recorded and I transcribed it. It's like tough to listen to because I get so emotional. I'm screaming and crying, and I'm like, you never told me it would be this hard being here. You never told me that there would be pain. You never told me there would be anger. You never told me there would be loneliness. You never told me it would be this hard being here. And they go, you volunteered for this, and now is the time. And and Yvonne is like, Mike, what is wrong? Like, I'm sobbing, I'm screaming. I'm like, I am so fucking pissed. They don't fucking understand what it means to be here. They don't care. This is like some fucking business deal for them. And I'm just like rabid in my fury. And then she goes, Mike, what do they want? And I scream, they want me to play some role. And then like I'm like, from as angry, like veins popping out of my forehead, my heart pounding, like just seething with anger, I go to like total calm. And I lay like on the audio, you can hear me kind of go, it sounds like you deflated a pool toy, like a big balloon. It sounds like it just goes, yeah. Like I just like, and I just felt like my heart stopped. I felt like my breathing stopped. It's the audio is totally silent for 45 seconds. And then Yvonne, in her very soft voice, says, and Mike, what happens next? And I go, I think I'm back in the sleeping bag. And we talked and tried to figure out what happened. And I'm like, I don't know what happened. I don't know what happened. The only thing I could say was that, you know what it felt like? It felt like in a spy movie. If the spy is holding the envelope, that he's got the plans are in the envelope, and the spy can't open that envelope until until he's ordered to open it. That's what it felt like. And then she goes, and Mike, what is your connection to owls? And without skipping a beat, I say, the owls aren't important. Now, this is at a point in my life where I was like answering owl emails all day long. I was writing owl books. I was like talking to people about their owl experiences. I was owls. Like, that was the most important thing. So this next little bit just flowed out of me, and it sounds different. Like in hypnosis, you talk really quietly in hypnosis, and there are long pauses. And I spoke much more forthright, and I said, the owls aren't important. I am an artist, and I know what it means when someone needs a symbol. The owl is a symbol on a door. The owl is not important, but it's the correct symbol for the door. We are on this side of the door. We are on this side of the door in a tight, claustrophobic little hallway. And on the other side of the door is an infinite vastness.
Well,
and that's all I got. And then a little bit later, she takes me out, and I was like, it was funny. I said, Yvonne, was I channeling? And I loved her answer. She said, how would I know? So like it was, so that happened in 2018, which is 8 years ago. And what that allowed me, like I had been clinging to the owl thing. It allowed me really to loosen up and take a few steps back and kind of say, okay, there's something else is going on. The owl is symbolic of something else. And I don't need to be so literal. So, so it really helped calm down my, I guess my obsessive ways. I was sort of stuck in this owl obsession. I still answer owl emails all day long, and I still doing the research, but it took on a softer, more open flavor. So there, you asked me at the beginning, you said, hey, you ever had an experience with hypnosis? And I kind of went, oh, how much time do you have? And then I mean, to tell that story, which I think is again, I'm going to say it again. I don't know what truly happened. I don't believe the story. What I can say is it's a powerful story, and it feels like there are like symbolic lessons in the story, but I don't think there's a ugly conference room on board a flying saucer with beige carpet and plastic folding tables.
Has this led your experience in 2018? Has this led you down another route in terms of your research?
A little bit, yeah. So here's what happened in the aftermath. So like I'm like only one person. I would love to have a staff of 10 collating all my data and putting it on spreadsheets and doing analytical surveys on what's showing up in these stories. But here's what I can say. I am getting 5 separate modalities. That's what I'm calling them, modalities. And one is owls and UFOs. People who see owls see them in the context of UFOs. I was asking for that story. Boy, I was getting it. I'm still getting them all the time. The next one that I'm finding in the research, people are showing up, and it's owls and meditation. People meditating will see owls. The third is owls and psychedelics. People taking psychedelics, most particularly mushrooms, are having interactions with owls. The fourth is owls and shamanic initiation. I just talked to a shaman over the weekend, and I kind of like, I have to check myself because I was like, am I out of line saying that shamans see owls more often, and they're like, oh, it's well understood within the shamanic community. There's shamans out there in all kinds of cultures, and owls show up at the time of initiation. And then the final one, which is probably the richest vein, I would probably have the most stories if I was asking for these stories, is owls and death. Owls showing up around the time someone dies. It's in all kinds of folklore all over the world. That's the most consistent one. So it's UFOs, meditation, psychedelics, shamanic initiation, and death. So it's not that the owl is connected to UFOs. It's that the owl is connected to these highly charged human experiences, of which a UFO contact experience or a sighting certainly qualifies as a highly charged human experience, but so do the other ones too. So the owl is connected to these powerful set of mystical experiences. All of them are kind of like elusive and mystical, like, psychedelics and meditation. They involve accessing another realm of reality. Death certainly does. I mean, you transfer to another realm entirely. So it seems to be the totem animal. The owl seems to be the totem animal of this either a transformational experience or an experience that involves tapping into another realm. And this has been super exciting for me to not cling to the UFO thing and to be much more open to these ancient folklores and people's stories.
Niall and I were having this chat there before we were just discussing what we could talk to you about, and one of the points that you just touched on, and I nearly forgot to say it to you, was Bohemian Grove. Have you heard of Bohemian Grove?
Sure.
So you have your Moloch,
the big owl
god.
Yeah.
Like there has to be something there. So
it's quite. They do it's like an initiation ceremony that they're doing there, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually looked into this. It's really tough to try to do research on this because the conspiracy culture is pretty nutty. So it goes right from like, so on the most conservative surface level, there's a club in San Francisco, which is the closest city to Bohemian Grove, and it's called the Bohemian Club. And it's right there in downtown San Francisco, and you can walk right in the door and you can talk to people in the club. It's like a men's club. It's an all men's club. They don't allow women, but it's basically business people. And so the goddess Athena she's the goddess of wisdom. She's also the goddess of commerce and the goddess of arts and the goddess of war. So she has a bunch of titles, but one of them is wisdom and the other is commerce. So the club was formed over 100 years ago. So, that kind of Greek mythology would have had a big, strong influence on them. So the club is just filled with owl motif. There's the owl statues, and then they all say Athena right on them, or some of them do. There's like Athena is often pictured. I'm doing this with my hand. She holds her hand up like this, and on her wrist sits a little owl, which is a Mediterranean owl. It's a cute little owl. It's about 4 or 5 inches tall. So she has a companion little owl. So there's it would be the owl and the goddess Athena would be a perfect logo or totem for a club like this. So I have to like, that's I've read all the stuff about drinking baby's blood, and I don't know what to make of that kind of stuff, and like the real sinister demonic aspects of what might be involved there. I actually when I had a student on one of my courses, and he worked as a waiter at the restaurant in Bohemian Grove, and what he said, would they have the outing once a year? And I don't know, this has been 20 years since I talked to this kid, and he's grown up now and everything, but he kind of said, oh, I can't talk too much about it. I like signed a non-disclosure agreement. But what he did say is like there was some serious drinking going on. Like people like went there and they were like just shit-faced, right from dawn to dusk. So it sounded a little more like, a bunch of rich people getting together and blowing off some steam rather than that's my sense. So I can't like, I'm open to those kind of conspiracies. I just have trouble pinning anything down as far as like what may or may not be real. There's lots of smoke, and I don't know what the source of the fire is, so.
Yeah. Yeah. Mike, I'd say we could get you on again down the line if you're up for it, because I think you have many more stories you could tell us.
Oh, I won't run out of stories. Yeah.
Excellent storyteller, in fairness to you. Come here. Where's the best place to get your books and at the moment?
The best place is through Amazon. So I self-published through Amazon, and so Amazon UK has them, and then every book has an audiobook component, so you can listen to an audiobook. And so I have 3 nonfiction books where I tell all the stories about owls, and then I have one fiction book which I just came out a couple years ago, and that was I'm really proud of that one, because it allowed me to look at the subject in a much different way than the nonfiction books. And so that easy to find. And if you can't remember my name, you can just Google UFOs owls. I'm the first thing that comes up, and you'll have no problem finding my website, which is mikeclelland.com. And then from there's like you can go to the books or the podcast or I've got cartoons that I drew, and I've got, references to my outdoor work too.
Yeah, it's brilliant. You're quite the illustrator as well. Fairness to you, you're a man of many talents.
Oh, the illustration is funny. In the advent of AI, like the phone ain't ringing anymore. Let me tell you, like when you can just, push a button and have any illustration you want.
It's nuts. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's gone crazy.
I'm like, it's never going to ring again. So.
But I think there will come a time where people go back to a bit of authenticity as well. Like, I think people will get fatigued with AI and they'll be looking for that human touch. I think that's going to come.
Yeah. So I do. I like. Yeah. Hopefully. And it's funny. You know what? I'm really content doing the writing. I really treat the writing as a creative act. Even the nonfiction work, it feels like it's a creative act. So I'm got my creative juices flowing, even though I'm not drawing anymore.
And what are you writing at the minute?
I'm working on 2 books right now. One is a book on owls, which is terrible. Is you want to not get anything done, try to do 2 books at the same time. I'm part 2 of the novel. So I'm doing a follow-up to the novel, which I didn't want to do initially, but every reader got back to me and like, well, you better finish this. Like, don't you dare end it there. And I was like, oh. So I feel like, so I'm working on that slowly. And then I'm working on a book on, which I want it to be a little shorter, smaller book, a little less intimidating book, only about owls and death. And then I'm purposely not going to put the word UFO anywhere in that book. So I think you put UFO on a book cover, boy, you're like, there's a big swath of the population that like ain't gonna pick that book up and carry it around. So I wanted purposely do an owls and death book without ever going down the UFO road. And I think and there's so many stories. I've got so many powerful, beautiful stories. If you want, I can do a whole show on owls and death. And yeah. So anyway, I won't run out of stuff to talk about.
That would be great.
That'd be a good one if we can get you on for the next time. That'll be a great one to chat about, actually. Yeah. Mike, again, thanks a million for your time, and pleasure talking to you. And
this has been great.
Best luck in your books, and we'll contact you down the road again shortly, and we'll get you on again, hopefully, if you're up for that.
Wonderful. Thank you.